Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. Let's kick things off. I think we have Ken online. Is there anybody else online? I want to make sure I have everybody counted for quorum here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, Doug's not a member. 8. We're at 8, so we got Ken. Cool. And I think that makes 9, right? Am I counting correctly? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Yep, 9 people. Fantastic. We have quorum. Let's do introductions. Go ahead, Ken.
Do you see Guthrie's message?
Guthrie
apparently can't hear anything.
So it looks like just Guthrie and Ken are online. So Guthrie can't hear anything. Ken can.
Well, it looks like he's.
Let's do introductions, and hopefully the technical difficulties will work out. Guthrie, I just see that you went off of mute. Say something, and hopefully we can hear you. You can't hear us, so how would you know that message?
If he can see us, I'm shaking my head no.
Yeah, and when I got on first, I couldn't hear anything either. I had to get off and get back in.
Hey, this is Guthrie. I can now hear.
Awesome, and we
And
can
we
hear
can
you.
now hear you.
Fantastic. All right. Most of the technical difficulties being worked out.
Because the meeting wasn't started, that's why no one was hearing. He shouldn't have been hearing.
Okay,
Now
good.
I'm hearing me twice. So nobody's hearing now that it started the meeting.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All good.
You rock. Thank you very much. All right, let's start with introductions. Any preference, Carrie? You want to kick us off? Remember introductions?
Carrie Sheldon, representing Precinct G.
Jeff Danes, representing Precinct D.
Diane Grimraff, Trellis, the Area Agency on Aging.
Allison Edmond.
Patty Thorson.
Paulsen, Region F and Vice Chair.
Okay.
Patty Thorson, Trellis, or Area Agency on Aging.
Andy Streisig, Metro Mobility. And while I have the mic, I just want to call out that we hired a new paratransit evaluator to take Courtney's former position. So Sarah Jacobson is here today for at least part of the meeting, as her schedule allows. We are very, very lucky to have her. She's doing great so far, has really hit the ground running, and has a rich work history doing similar functionally based assessments to help keep people independent and in their homes as they either recover or adjust to their various disabilities. So well-versed with the assessment portion of the job and well-versed in the independent living movement. We're very, very pleased with how stuff is going.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. Heidi, take it away.
Heidi from Minnesota CCD.
Claudia Fugly, MNCCD.
Perfect. And members in the audience, feel free to introduce yourselves. You can go again if you want. Otherwise, we can move to your left. Yes.
Mike Lubner, Sergeant with the Metro Transit Police Department.
Leslie Kandaras, Chief of Staff at Metro Transit.
Nikki Villavicencio.
Kevin, Senior Manager, Metro Mobility.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started with approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. On to the minutes from August. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our August TAAC meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Patty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Perfect, unanimous again. So nice to go do that quickly in person rather than having to do roll calls. All right, we can just dive right into business and information item.
People online, did they say their votes?
Oh, I did not do that. Thank you, Heidi.
I was
Thank
just
you.
gonna say.
Oh, you all provide so much support for me. Ken, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, Ken Rodgers, Region D.
And then Guthrie.
Guthrie Byard, Council's ADA and Title VI Administrator.
Fantastic. Sorry to forget about you guys. Good thing Heidi's here. All right, so we've had an introduction to the Safety and Security Action Plan. I don't remember exactly what month it was in, but we have had some safety concerns over the last few months, including member-specific safety concerns. It turned into, I think, a good discussion last month, but it was a discussion that was not on the agenda, and then council and Metro Transit staff were not here to be able to respond to questions or concerns that we had. So we have allotted a decent amount of time on our this month's agenda to have an update and also maybe a chance to address some of the concerns of the TAAC members. So for that, we do have Chief of Staff at Metro Transit, Leslie Kandaras. Please join us.
Oh, don't use that. Just say next slide.
Okay. Is that okay? Won't even tap next slide. All right. Good afternoon, Chair, members. My name is Leslie Kandaras, and I work at Metro Transit as the Chief of Staff, and I'm joined by Sergeant Mike Lubner from the Metro Transit Police Department. As the Chair introduced, we are back to provide just a brief update on the safety and security plan, but we're really hoping to reserve the bulk of this time to hear from you, both to answer questions and just listen to experiences you're having that you want to make sure we're aware of. Next slide, please. So I'll take just a few minutes to provide an update on Metro Transit's Safety and Security Action Plan. We were last here on June 1st, your June meeting, to talk about the plan that was still a draft at that point. And even before that June meeting, we had been in front of this committee a couple times last year and earlier this year when the Metropolitan Council's police work group was underway. So the Safety and Security Action Plan is a document that came out of about 2 years of work that the Metropolitan Council did as part of a broader police review process following the murder of George Floyd. That process included a lot of public engagement that was led by the Citizens League. Metro Transit supplemented that with more employee engagement during our Safety and Security Action Plan development process. We engaged with about 500 employees with a focus on our frontline employees. So part of what I'll do today is just give you a sense of what ended up in that plan and what we're doing in terms of implementing it. But again, we want to really reserve our time to hear from you today. Next slide, please. Jason. So back in June, a few weeks after we were last in front of you, the Metropolitan Council endorsed the Safety and Security Action Plan's 3 areas of work. And the 3 areas of work identified in this plan are improving conditions on the system, training and supporting employees, and engaging customers and partners. The Safety and Security Action Plan document has about 40 action items that fall into one of these 3 areas of work. And together, the action plan really tries to demonstrate publicly what Metro Transit is working on to address the issues of safety and perception of safety that we know are really at the top of our customers' list of concerns. I think it's fair to also say Metro Transit recognizes that we can't fix all the issues on our own. We have to rely on partnerships and working to ensure that the systems that influence the conditions on our system and some of the root causes of poverty, homelessness, chemical addiction, untreated mental illness. These are issues much broader than what our action plan alone can address, but this is really meant to be the framework that we're using to identify what's in our control and report publicly what we're doing about it. Next slide, please. So these are just some examples. As I said, we have about 40 items in the action plan, but some of the work that's already underway. Back in July, the Metropolitan Council increased our police officer wages, and we've also increased wages for our community service officers. That's a step that's really critical to this overarching action plan item to improve recruitment, hiring, and retention of our officers and community service officers. I think one theme that we heard really prominently, both from our own employees, but also from community engagement, is the importance of having presence presence on our system. The importance of having a person who works for Metro Transit, it can be a police officer, it doesn't have to be a police officer, but somebody who has that official presence really helps shore up the perception of safety on our system, and then this notion that, you know, this is a regulated space and Metro Transit has our eyes and ears out there. So that's the raising of the wages is one critical step to help advance that part of our action plan. Starting this Saturday, we're going to launch our supplemental security pilot. What this is going to start as is having private security personnel who are unarmed be at our Franklin Avenue light rail station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to provide, again, that additional official presence. It's supplemental because it's not taking the place of our police department at all, but rather recognizing that, you know, when we have constrained resources and we're still trying hard to hire officers, but we need in certain places where we're seeing a high reporting level of issues, we need to provide that extra degree of security. So we're going to start off at Franklin Avenue Station. We intend to go to Lake Street, Midtown Light Rail Station next with this, and then depending on how this works, would be expanding it to other high traffic sites where we receive a lot of concerns from people about the conditions and behavior there. I know at your last meeting you talked about the 2-car light rail train pilot survey that was out at that time. This was a pilot that ran earlier this summer. Currently, we're still analyzing the results, both the performance metrics as well as the survey that was out in the field that I know many of you participated in. So I think this month we'll have that information available to us to make some longer-term decisions. In the meantime, you're going to see a mix of 2-car and 3-car light rail trains. Certainly with schools coming back in session, people continuing to do more in-office work than perhaps they were doing over the last couple of years of the pandemic. We are seeing a rise in ridership, and we'll be providing 3-car trains when we expect we need it for capacity, but we'll continue to use 2-car trains at points too. So that's a long way of saying more to come as we analyze the results of that pilot, including what we heard from the survey. But it's another example of things we're trying to adjust and test to see if it can help change some of the dynamics on the system. The next bullet on here talks about resuming red kite training. This is training we provide to our operators, and it really gives them tools and techniques to improve their own resiliency and their ability to interact effectively with customers and de-escalate situations. And the final example on here is another key piece of our action plan is really strengthening the relationships within Metro Transit between our police department and our frontline staff. So for example, the police department's been out going to our garages and other facilities, having coffee with a cop and really talking to frontline employees about what they're experiencing and how they can best partner with the police department to address those issues. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to read this whole slide to you, but just wanted to point out that even though this action plan is new as of the last couple of months, it's really building on a lot of work we've been doing for years. Over the last 3 or so years, we've really been focused on increasing resources to increase presence on the system. That's really been challenged by the hiring or labor market right now, but continue to put resources to making sure we do have personnel out there who are visible. We've improved the camera system on the light rail system and created the real-time information center, which I know Sergeant Lumner is our leader of and could definitely talk more about that resource. We continue to support the Text for Safety program. We increased staff for that program a couple years ago. We've increased the number of cleaning staff, knowing that, again, part of that perception of safety is the conditions people see when they're there, and that sends people signals, positive or negative, depending on how well maintained it is. And again, we continue to invest in the police department's homeless action team, which is really designed to help people connect to services and housing. Next slide, please. Finally, I'll just mention that part of what the council did when it endorsed the action plan back in June was also required us to start providing quarterly reports. So we're working on our quarter 3 report right now. And we're going to come in front of the Metropolitan Council's Committee of the Whole on October 5th to talk about the work that's been happening so far, as well as some of the performance metrics we're looking at. We're going to be providing all this information on our website too. Part of our commitment in this plan is to be really open and transparent about the work we're doing and what progress we're seeing or not seeing. So the metrotransit.org/public safety website is where we're going to have the reports. And if you went there today, you could find a copy of the plan itself too. Next slide, please. All right, so that was maybe not as quick as I had hoped, but that was our overview of kind of where we are and some of what's happened over the last couple of months. But again, thank you for having us, and we're both here to listen to your comments and answer any questions you have for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And I actually thought that was pretty quick.
Okay.
You wanted it to be quicker?
I felt like I was talking a lot, so yeah.
I have a few questions here. I'll just ask one and then open it up to other members. Are the CSOs already in the field?
Chair Fenley, and I'll start and also ask the sergeant to add to this, but yes, we do have CSOs. Back in July of 2021, we announced a transit security initiative that grew our CSO budgeted positions from 20 part-time positions to 70 part-time positions. We've had a really difficult time hiring those. I think right now we're probably hovering around 13, 15 CSOs. I'm looking at this. The number fluctuates.
It's 14.
14? Okay, I was right in there. So yes, they're out on the system, but we're nowhere near the number we wanted. And Sergeant, certainly if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, just it's kind of a part-time job. So one of the kind of the conditions of our CSO employment is to have them the officers working towards a degree in law enforcement to become police officers. So while we lose some, they don't leave the department, they just get promoted to police officer. So that's part of it, it's a short-term job for them.
Okay. And I know you last time and also this time you spoke a little bit about what the CSOs do. Can you maybe go into what the main difference is? I mean, I would imagine they're not carrying lethal arms. That's probably the main difference. But in terms of like attitude or approach to dealing with safety concerns throughout the system.
Yeah, so kind of the biggest, overall in law enforcement, the biggest difference between a CSO and a police officer is the CSOs often take a lot of tasks that don't require a licensed police officer to accomplish. Whether it be they help us with some administrative things, but then for us, they help us on our special events where they do the fair inspections on our special events and kind of interact with the public there. They're out visible on the system as an extra layer of kind of eyes and ears so that they're interacting with customers, and if they see an issue, they will contact through our dispatch and have a police officer come over and deal with it if it's a criminal issue. But other than that, giving directions, helping people with questions about the system and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I would imagine there's also a level of deterrence just having somebody who has an official shirt on or whatever their garb is on the trains to deter things. Ken, I see your hand up, and then I'll come to the room.
Did we lose Ken? He went off air.
I think our techie might have muted you, Ken, because we heard some of the screen reader coming through. So go ahead and try again. And I think they unmuted you right now.
He literally, I saw him go dark.
I did too. We'll come back to you, Ken, or just chime in whenever you get back online, or if I see your camera come back up, I'll reach back out to you. Do members in the room have? Yes, Jeff.
A couple of questions. The CSOs, when they're there, are they by themselves or are they paired up, two at a time for safety purposes? And my second question is, well, I'll say this. Last night I saw they're hiring at the University of Minnesota CSOs. I know it's very competitive and it's public information, so I was wondering what the salary range is in terms of, maybe you don't know that or do know it, but I'd be curious to know what that salary range is.
Sure. Chair, member,
Yes, go ahead.
I'll start on the salary. Just when we increased wages earlier this summer, I believe we increased the starting wage to $25 an hour for CSOs. I don't know the full range. We could certainly provide that information. And do you want to speak a little bit about how they're deployed in pairs or?
Yeah, generally speaking, if all of our CSOs are deployed in at least pairs of 2, sometimes 3, there are times where a CSO would be by themselves, but that's more for administrative duties if they have to run a piece of equipment from one location to the other where they're not necessarily interacting with the public. But on the system, they are in at least groups of 2.
Thank you. Jeff, did you have a follow-up?
No.
Okay, Darrell.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to know is, I did notice quite a presence of officers, and I didn't notice the fast response during I would say in the middle of the day. What does that look like? Obviously, when it's not the middle of the day, and it's the peak of like a system, like a switchover or something, because I often hear, folks say, well, yeah, they came for you quick this time, but they don't normally come that quick. And then, and then we have to sort out, well, what time of the day it was it, where was it, and those kind of things. And what I was wondering is the average cost of a CSO is, even part-time, it's costly, I would assume, because you invest in training them as well. But is that, like you said, that training must be transferable to something else. Otherwise, why would they often do that, So I'm wondering, what is the cost and what is the benefit of the system, and why are we only at 14 officers when we should be closer to 60 or 70 like you suggest?
Sure. Or do you want me to start?
Sure.
Or do you want to start? So, Chair, I'll maybe start addressing the CSO piece and look to the sergeant to maybe speak about response time a little bit too, and how the police department manages that. I think you're raising a really good question. Why are we so far below our budgeted amount of CSOs? I think, and I would welcome the sergeant's views on this too. I would say what we're hearing is generally there's been less of an interest in people starting law enforcement careers over the last few years. There's been less enrollment in schools, and that trickles down to the number of eligible people for our CSO program. The way the CSO program is currently designed is you do need to be an enrolled student seeking a degree in law enforcement. So I think we're probably trying to draw from a fairly small pool right now that's competitive, because we're certainly not the only ones trying to hire CSOs. I will say one of the items in the action plan is to look at that CSO model and see if we can supplement that with a different type of ambassador or other personnel that would not be law enforcement track, to try to get our numbers up, knowing that we've had such a difficult time over the last year or so trying to increase that number. So I'm not giving you a good answer. I'm like admiring the problem with you, but it's something we think raising the pay certainly helps, but I think we're committed in the action plan to looking to additional steps we can take to increase that presence. But your earlier points were really about response time, and I think maybe the sergeant can address that too.
And it does bring me up to my main question that I was thinking about when I was called on, was that you said homelessness and mental health issues that are pretty prevalent on the system, and they're a burden on the system at times. So how many of those officers, the 14 that we currently have that type of interaction dealing with folks that are truly homelessness and that are experiencing probably some mental health or maybe a little bit of drug addiction along with self-medication. I mean, there's a lot of that. And we see it throughout the system, but we know there's hot spots. And how do you partner? How does Metro Transit partner with local law enforcement or local community partners to kind of lessen that burden on you guys and kind of shift it to the community partners that are designed to deal with those kind of things.
Chair, Vice Chair, I'll just, two quick thoughts, and then I want the sergeant to address that to you. One, just to clarify, the 14 numbers just for our community service officers, we have over 100 full-time sworn police personnel in the department, so I don't want to leave the impression that we only have the 14 CSOs out there. And the sergeant, I'm hoping will talk a little bit about how they're trained and equipped to really work with people in the populations that you're describing. I will say part of what we're doing at Metro Transit generally is really continuing the conversations, particularly with the counties, about social services and how our homeless action team in particular can connect people to the social services in our region. And I'm being kind of vague because I'm not the expert on that, but I think it's a struggle across the region. Certainly it's a struggle for us, and I know we're not alone in that, but Sergeant, maybe if you want to speak about the police department's approach to those issues.
Sure, Chair and Vice Chair. So the first part I wanted to touch on was the training that the community service officers receive when they are employed with that title with us. They get a lot of de-escalation and more or less self-defense training, not like aggressive training, but able to defend themselves. And I've seen in this, the officers that are now officers that were community service officers, when they're going through the academy and we run scenario-based training, you can really see how they're able to talk with our role players and de-escalate and that, and they just have a little more familiarity with the system and how it works. So yes, we definitely do train them kind of in the first steps of becoming a police officer, and then when they get hired on as a police officer, that's where we go for all the other aspects of being a police officer. As for response times, right now our department is on 10-hour shifts, and with that being 3 shifts throughout the day, we try to cover rush hour as best as we can. Our day shift and our middle shift will overlap a little bit on rush hour, and then but our middle shift is kind of there for when day shift goes home and night shift comes on. There's always that group of officers that are overlapping, so we shouldn't have everybody at the station, you know, getting ready to go home or just getting ready to start work. There's always that group of officers that's out on the street. And the last part is escaping me.
Vice Chair, I might have to ask you, what part of your question are we missing?
The last part was about, I don't know, I thought it was about the mental.
Oh.
How many of those officers have like specialized training relating to not just de-escalation, but maybe mental health or maybe really detailed homelessness and what that really means? I mean, because if you ask anybody what homelessness means, everybody has a different definition of it, and it's a different varying degree. I mean, but there's really clear chronic homelessness around a lot of our stations, and we can see it, right? And so, I mean, maybe the partners that we're partnering with aren't doing what they need to be doing, or we need to be looking at maybe increasing those partnerships and figuring out how we can creatively use new ones. I mean,
I can answer this. Chair and the Vice Chair.
Yes.
So for officers with training in the department, we have a fair amount, and I'm sorry, I don't know the number. We have a fair amount of officers that are trained in what's called CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Training. It's a 40-hour training program that the officers go through, and it's all de-escalation and other tactics to use when someone's experiencing a mental health crisis. And then also our HAT team is spread out within the department's deployment strategy. So we may not have all of the HAT team members working at once, but we kind of put them on different shifts so that if an officer in the field encounters someone who's experiencing homelessness and is willing and wants to receive services, an officer can just get on the radio and ask if there's a HAT team member working, and that officer will then go over to wherever the scene is. They can go into, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, any of the areas. They're not geographically limited, and they can meet with the individual that's seeking services. And we have, if a HAT team member's not working, we can take the individual's name and information down, and then provide that to a HAT team member who then can reach out.
Is that HAT?
Yeah, I'm sorry, and the acronym stands for Homeless Action Team.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Well, my question is, now it's coming into the suburbs, because I live in West St. Paul in Dakota County. And so ever since University Walmart closed down for good reasons, because there was a lot of problems, and then you guys can't do your job correctly, So now I'm seeing one bus stop where, do you work with the city of, and then the thing, because the suburbs are starting to see the homeless and people coming from St. Paul and Minneapolis, wherever they're coming from, because they want to go to our Walmart, but then we see all the different actions of things that they're not really a part of West St. Paul. They're just coming to go shopping and do a few things. And we also got a place where you can donate some stuff, with your body. And so we get a lot of those, So just how do you protect the suburbs when it's all happening in the inner? And do you do more training with all kinds of disabilities and not just the mental health? Because legislation was put out, for people with autism, but there's also other types of disabilities where, you don't know what's going to happen out there. It could happen to me, someone could do something, and then I have to figure out how to process the information to give to you, and it's not a mental illness, it's not this, it's just, now we're all worked up and we have to figure out how to take care of me at the same time we take care of what happened on the bus or on the light rail. So are you trained to work with all kinds of disabilities and not just one area to focus on? Because Darrell's right, there is a big issue with the homeless and the mental illness, but there's a wide variety of disabilities in that could be causing all sorts of whatever. Even if I got hurt, and someone took advantage of me, which has happened, how do I process if you ask me a weird question, you know what I mean? So I have to figure out, looking like I'm not, mentally ill, or I'm not this, I could just be scared. So something to think about, and think about the suburbs, because it's starting to show up in our area, and vandalism, and I feel sorry for Metro Transit fixing so many glass, since we got new shelters, and then starting to see homeless, because on Robert Street, they're fixing it, and now they're using the shelter that's homeless, at night, as they fix the roads. So it's just something we have to think about in all aspects, not just in St. Paul and Minneapolis and certain suburbs. Thank you. If you can answer any of my questions, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Heidi. Feel free to respond if you have a response.
Chair, committee member. The first part, suburbs, they are in our response area, and we do try to get down to them as time allows. If we have a call for service that is down in a suburb, we will go down and address the issue. If it's a high priority call, we have good relationships with a lot of our peer agencies that are in the suburbs, and we can ask them for an assist to get there to, if it's a life safety event, they might be able to get there faster than we are because they're responding from within their city, and we may be not in that city at that time. But we take them seriously, and we still will respond down and take the report and deal with the situation. As for the training on other disabilities, aside from, like you stated, Post Board did mandate autism training for police officer licenses. The CIT training we have covers a wide range of mental illnesses that we would go through, but But I think a lot of what we do is just in our training is conflict resolution, and speaking with people, and a person doesn't necessarily, have to have a disability to be distraught after a crime or upset or any of that. That's all very normal human reaction to a traumatic event. And so we do work just on getting a victim of crime comforted, calmed down. I don't want to say calmed down, but comforted, reassuring them that, the police are here. We are here to make this better. A lot of the stuff we've been training in the past few years is kind of slowing everything down that we do. Law enforcement years ago was you get to a call, you clear it as fast as you can, and you get to the next call because that's what we always did. We've looked at that and thought that's not necessarily the best way to do it. If we have to stay on a call for an extra 20 minutes, but we get a better result because of that, it's worth it to us in the long run.
Thank you. Do any other members have questions? I have like 5 or 6 more, but I want to give you all some chances here. Go ahead, Darrell. Yeah, go ahead.
What is your average response time to call in the system, let's say, per se, downtown St. Paul versus on the edge of St. Paul?
Chair and Vice Chair, that's a very good question. I don't have the exact answer for you, but we can get that. I will say just some backstory to those numbers. We have different calls kind of require different responses. If it's what we call a priority 1 call where there's life or safety, that's a lights and sirens response. So we will go lights and sirens to that. Those call times will be less than what's considered a priority 2 call where there is no real danger to the public. There's nothing, it would endanger public safety to go lights and sirens to that, and the risk outweighs actually going lights and sirens. So that would be, if we got, an example of that would be a bus driver reports there's a bus shelter with broken glass. Well, the glass is broken. We don't know who did it. We don't know when it happened. We're just going to drive, just following normal traffic laws to that call. That will be a longer response time. So I will try to get you some averages in those numbers.
Thank you.
I realize this is outside of the scope of both what you do and what we do, but do you know if is there a required field experience portion to law enforcement degrees? Or you just kind of have to get lucky that these folks want to actually work in the field while they're in their degree program?
Chair, there are a lot of schools that require some sort of internship.
Okay.
So that could kind of be some field work that they have to do. One portion of any licensure degree that you get, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year degree, is that you have to take what's called police skills, which is more of a hands-on, for lack of a better term, it's a police academy, but it's not sponsored by a department. It's a part of your college degree. And so that's some of the field experience that the candidates would get. But other than that, it's, if anybody knows any friends or family that want to be cops, the CSO program is a great way to get your feet wet. I have to plug that.
Yeah, that was good.
No, thank you. I mean, I realize we have an overall labor shortage in this country. And also the fact that, you're not a social, support agency, you're not, a homelessness agency, you're not a chemical dependency agency, you're not a mental health agency, you're more or less a transit providing entity. But it just happens that society's problems tend to show themselves on transit lines. Go ahead, Heidi.
My question is, are you reaching out to the high school kids like they're doing for the medical field to get more in the human services area? Like for people who need, like a person to help them with their disabilities, and kind of getting them, because I know this has kind of gotten a bad rap, over the years. And I know there are really good cops, because when I was at the state fair, they were very good at making sure, even if I couldn't understand all the processing of getting to gate number 9. Now I know gate number 9 is Metromobility, but you're cops were very good. The cops were very good at making sure I knew and everyone had a different way of doing it. So maybe you should look into high school kids. And also when I was thinking about, as I was talking, also in your training, think about how people process information so we can figure out how to get back to you, because our history doesn't do very well with people with disabilities, and sometimes we say the wrong thing and it ends up being something that should have never happened, and then it ends up being a bigger problem than it needs to be. So if we can try not to make it so it becomes that, at the same time, we're getting the help that would, limit some of the action. But I think high school kids would, because my nephew is, my great nephew, he's an Army National Guard, because he believes in making a difference, and he's doing a real good job. So how do you recruit people like that want to make a difference in the world?
Thank you, Heidi. I don't think anybody under the age of 18 would be allowed to do this kind of job.
No,
personally.
but you got to start somewhere. Once they graduate from high school, and they decide to go to college, what is their careers and what are they thinking? Maybe there is some young kid that really wants to make a difference. Maybe it's a color person, maybe it's a white person. I don't know. Maybe there's somebody out there. But someone has to start at someplace. And high school may be a good place to start,
Thank you, Heidi. When you were talking, it made me think of a couple, fields maybe outside of law enforcement, like social work programs or public health programs. I don't know. I mean, do those folks want to be in these types of situations to bring a different perspective to public safety? But those are good points, Heidi. Ken.
When you have a chance, I have a question.
I see you're back on, Ken, and I see your hand up, and I really want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and I can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry for the technical issues I seem to be having, but I don't know how long my signal will be good, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I'm sorry if I missed this conversation or this part of the conversation while I was trying to re-engage. But, something that, Sarah, you said at the very beginning, and then something, David, you responded to that.
We lost him again?
Oh, dear.
We lost you, Ken. And I'm guessing he meant Leslie, not Sarah. I'm just guessing.
Text it. Is there a way he can type it in and then you can read it?
I think we'll move on. I have a few more questions, and then Ken, if you can hear me, just jump in whenever we lost your audio. Ken, just jump in. You probably are talking right now because you don't know that we can't hear you. But just jump in when you can get back on.
To go back to, I think he was talking about me and you. When Ken got on, because he heard one part and then he heard the other part.
Possibly. So I'm curious about the folks that are at the Franklin station 24/7. I'm guessing that's outside of the Metro Police and outside of the CSO as well. So are they just community members that you're paying to be there?
Chair, so we've gone through a procurement process to secure a contract with a vendor. So it's a firm that bid to provide this service to us. I don't have the vendor's name off the top of my head. It will officially start Saturday, and it'll be a learning experience to see how it goes. So I don't, but so that's who it's from. It's people who are being hired by the firm who. Yeah.
So essentially just 1 second, and then I'll come to you. So essentially just an outside, security firm, places that you see that, staff buildings around downtown St. Paul. Correct. Okay, go ahead, Heidi.
Is that similar to what the U of M is doing, because they have a high crime, where they got people wearing certain T-shirts or certain uniforms, and then they're just out, on bikes and walking the streets, and then they put more call buttons or call boxes, and more lighting. Is that similar to what you're talking about? Because they had it plastered all over the news because of the first day of school.
Yeah, Chair.
Yes.
Committee member, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know the similarities or differences, but what we're trying to do is, again, supplement our existing resources by getting additional people there. So it's a good question. I'm going to look into what the U is doing. They might have some ideas
Well,
for
it's
us.
just because I don't want people to get the wrong idea from the
Yeah.
you, from this to
Yeah.
that. This can be a really confusing, learning experience. At the same time, they want to learn how this all works, from the
Yeah.
you to you guys. So it might be some education we need to do, because now it's a hot topic everywhere.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna try to call Ken on my cell phone. You talked a little bit about the red kite training. I'm curious, can you go into a little more detail as to what it is? And is it something that all officers or CSOs engage in?
So, Chair, the short answer is I cannot go into much detail on this, but it's for our operators, actually. So it's a program that particularly our bus operators have been taking, and it was something that we were really engaged in earnest before COVID and had to suspend it due to concerns of having in-person training during that time. So, yeah, it's different than the training our police department personnel receive, but certainly if there's interest here, I'm sure we can work with our bus training folks to come and provide more information.
Thank you. And I'm also curious if you've had any successes, or if it's happened yet with this this police operator relationship building program, which sounds kind of cool, actually. Because I mean, if they get to know each other and are friends with each other, I think it might.
I don't know, Sergeant Lunar, have you been participating in any of these? Or I've heard anecdotally they're going well, but yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, Chair, I've been to a couple of the Coffee with a Cop, particularly at the both light rail lines, and no, they've been really, really good. Sometimes you forget that what the police department's problems or issues are, the operators are experiencing the same thing, and I think some of the best things that have come out of these sessions or having a cup of coffee is you get to understand what the other job group is doing and why they do what they do. You know, like for us, for the police officers, when we're riding the light rail and switching train cars at a station, you're sometimes having to run to the next train car because the doors are being closed. And so it's like, hey, if you see us on the platform, we're hustling, but give us a break, you know. And then to some of the other points of, if they miss a bar signal, it can be detrimental, or they can be down on their time. So it's really understanding what do the bus operators and train operators, what do they need from the police department? And in turn, what can the bus operators and train operators do for the police department to make it a little easier job for everybody involved?
Nice. I like that. I think that sounds like it could provide some benefit. So you said you were increasing the folks who are employed in the text. Man, I don't know the exact name of it, but the people who respond to the text. The texts into the system. Have you seen an increase in demand? Is that why you're increasing the supply? Maybe that's
In Chair, yeah, good question. So that was actually one of the examples of previous work that this action plan is building on. So we about doubled the number of staff back in 2019 and have kept an eye on, is that the right number? So we don't have, at this moment, as far as I'm aware, plans to increase that further. So, but it's a good question about the volume we're getting. I haven't seen numbers on that, but we know generally our ridership continues to climb. So I would imagine we're starting to see more volume and need to keep an eye on it. So, yeah, good question.
okay. Because I know that folks were happy to have that implemented. It was a great way to kind of slyly or quietly
Yeah.
inform you all of things that are happening. Those are all my questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I have one more.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Are you still checking on people, because I've been a few times, well, more than a few times, but on the trains, but they don't do it on the bus, but because if you don't have pay, the bus driver decides, no, you can't ride, or yes, you can ride. But are you still having people go out and check, the cards to see if, so you can kind of get some numbers of how many people are jumping the rides or going for other reasons that, end up being something, that should never have been there in the first place, because I've seen all sorts of things on the trains. And I'm not afraid to ride it. I just want to be safe and be okay. But it's just because I built that kind of strong, belief that this is my life and I don't drive at all. Just so you know, I am a person who will never be able to drive. So buses and trains and Metromobility or a taxi or a friend has to be the way of the future for me. So I see everything, even walking down the street just to get to the station can be very scary sometimes. So it's all angles, but are you looking at the cards, still as part of the program, or has that slowing down?
Chair and committee member, yes, we still are checking tickets or fares and cards and all that on the light rail, and we're working to increase our staffing on the light rail trains, visible presence not only with the CSOs but having more officers on the trains, and so hopefully next time or the next couple of times you ride, you see an officer on the train.
Take notes and then.
Because it's an honor system, but the honor system isn't working very well in some cases. It's really has to do with location, and I don't know why. So, and you already know all that. That's why you're here talking about it.
Thank you, Heidi. I did get Ken on the phone, so I put him on speaker. He might have a little bit of trouble hearing the response, but at least he'll be able to get his question in. I will. I'm just laying the groundwork first. So Ken, take it away. You're on speaker, and you can.
All right. Thank you for reaching out to me. I for whatever reason, the network just does not want to stay connected today. So I don't know if it's me or the weather or what. But anyway, my question was more of kind of connecting the dots between what you spoke about, Sarah, in the very beginning when you first started talking and sharing, and then something later on that David mentioned several times in answering other people's questions and commenting. So in my mind, it seems like Metro Transit is trying to be responsible and address the security issue by implementing a lot of different strategies. Some of those strategies are areas really outside the expertise of Metro Transit, but you're trying to address them anyway. Having CSOs that can help people connect with housing and other services, social services. I'm wondering, in an effort to be more visible, whether that's Metro Transit staff or other staff that can be responsive, I'm wondering what would it take to engage in partnerships with nonprofits and other social agencies in the Twin Cities that could partner with Metro Transit and provide staff or a person on every platform to serve as an ambassador, a question, an information booth that could connect people with resources that come up to them and have a need to have a discussion. Again, it's having more visibility that there's someone related to staff on platforms, in trains, that could really be useful in having services go where people are that need services. And maybe that would help get them off of the train so much, but just be able to reach out and have a connection with a partnership agency that could provide services or connect people to services as another piece of this safety program. Just a thought.
Chair.
Go ahead. Yeah, that was
Committee
a
member.
fantastic
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, so as I mentioned, one of the action plan items is going to be to really take a look at what more we can be doing to add presence. I think in terms of the model of seeing can we partner with nonprofits and others, that's a great idea, and I'm going to add it to kind of this ongoing effort to figure out what more can we be doing to improve presence. I will say on some probably limited scale, we have engaged in contracts in the past, and usually these are held by the police department. We have one with Radius Health in Ramsey County to help support our homeless action team's work to connect people to services. We're in the process of preparing to contract with groups to do youth outreach. So, I mean, we've had some pockets of examples where we have worked with more community-based organizations or nonprofits, usually through more of a contracting model than a different type of partnership. But I think you're raising a really good idea, and it's something I want to throw in the mix and just see, are there other opportunities out there to really expand the reach of our presence, so.
Yeah, and I also think that, this isn't strictly a Metro Transit problem. This is a community problem. And it's really not fair to put all of the responsibility just on Metro Transit's shoulders. It should be all of our problem, and we should come together to try to address this in a holistic way. And I think that would take some of the pressure off of Metro Transit always having to be the ones that respond. I get it, but I think it's a bigger problem that we need to kind of all engage together. So I appreciate you taking that forward.
Yeah, thank you.
You want to respond?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I don't really have more of a response, but I appreciate the point and the perspective. Yeah.
Do you want me to keep you on here, Ken? Heidi, go ahead.
And that would also help the people, and I've actually seen this, that come out of the, like the homeless shelters or the hospitals, because I see them on the buses and trains. So if you can have those types of people, or maybe talk to certain entities that, and say, hey, we get a lot of people that shift out. We see a lot of they're coming from the shelter or they're coming from the hospital. Is there something they can do to make it so it's not the repeating or doing things, they really are getting the help that they, went there for, So you guys can do things. So maybe you can partner up, like Ken was saying, because I see a lot of them on the trains and buses, because they don't leave sometimes without their tags, and or all their belongings, or their wheelchair, whatever they bring with them. So that's another way you can help the community, by cleaning some of this up, by working with different entities, bigger than what Ken is talking about, because it is more than you guys can handle. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
But I thought it was something to think about, because
Yeah.
I see it all the time.
Definitely appreciate that.
Did you have a response?
Just,
No, she just,
Yeah, I
it's
appreciate
kind of
the
like what Ken was
ideas, it's
saying, but I
helpful.
was just,
Yeah.
so she has to take it back and figure out how to,
see what we can do.
yeah, because you were taking notes earlier.
Yeah, thank you.
Do any other members have questions, comments? All right, go ahead, Darrell.
The other thought I would have, how does the CSOs, or how does that play into, I know in the last legislative session, we talked about an ambassador program, or travel ambassador, and we were seeking money from the legislature to do that. That didn't happen. I would assume that these SCOs or CSOs would interact with those transit ambassadors when and if that program got up and running. And is it just a matter of funding that program? Is that why we don't have it? Or is there a way that we can look for community grants to look at trying to see how we can jumpstart that program? I know we're looking at other systems like Franklin has the 24-hour service, and we'll look at expanding that when necessary. But how do we partner with I mean, other organizations that are out there already doing this work. I mean,
Chair, Vice Chair, couple thoughts. So there have been different legislative proposals over the years. The Metropolitan Council's initiative, agency initiative, that relates to the ambassador CSO work is our legislative proposal for administrative citations for fair noncompliance. That has not passed the legislature, but that piece, we're pursuing that because currently it's a misdemeanor to ride without paying your fare, and as a result, only our sworn police officers can write citations for that. So what we would envision doing if we can get that changed to a civil penalty as opposed to a criminal one would be to have CSOs or some other non-sworn personnel be the ones who are inspecting fares and issuing citations when people are not in compliance. In terms of getting the program going, back in July of 2021, that's actually what we were trying to do by expanding the community service officer program. Is we felt that would be a way to at least start increasing presence, even though we didn't have the authority to have them inspect fares. And as we've talked about, we just have not had the success in hiring that we had hoped to. And that's why in the action plan, we are relooking at what options we have for non-sworn personnel, whether they be CSOs or a different type of ambassador. So it's the short answer is it's not a funding issue right now. I think it's a program design issue and labor market issue. So.
well, because I was gonna say, like, the county does subsidize rides to certain participants, certain groups.
That would be
To
me.
ride their systems, so I mean.
Yeah, it's a
you
good
could
idea.
expand that, those types of benefits or those types of amenities to some community officers too, volunteer officers too.
Yeah, thank you.
Darrell, that kind of, that and Ken's comments sparked a question in my mind that you might not want to answer, but you can do it in general terms if you'd like to. I would imagine, I mean, we all know, it's been said here like at least 10 times, that this is not necessarily a transit problem. This is a society problem that has become a transit problem. So Ken's suggestion maybe to reach out to the entities that are tasked with addressing these types of societal issues. Have you maybe reached out to counties, and have you had them respond or not respond in ways that lead you to believe that they're happy pushing this problem off onto you as opposed to dealing with it themselves? I know that's kind of a controversial question to ask in an open meeting, but
No, Chair, I
wouldn't be surprised if the answer was yes.
I would say we have active relationships with the counties and continuously are looking for ways to work more closely with them. I know our homeless action team, for instance, is working closely with Hennepin County to get people, this may not be their exact title, but people who are case managers actually to come out to like the Mall of America station where we have sometimes people who might be interested in services congregating. So there's definitely partnerships there. I think it's really, as you've all said, this is a region-wide issue that I think a lot of entities are really trying to figure out, and there's, I'm sure, always room for improving coordination and collaboration. And it's, I think, yeah, it's a tough issue. I don't have a great answer to it, but it's, I don't think the issue is anybody is unwilling to work on it or unwilling partners. I think it's just really a challenging
I mean, to
time.
Ken's point, I don't see any reason why there should not be county officials on platforms redirecting these folks to the services and supports that they need.
Some accountability. See,
Yeah.
I'm a small service provider in several counties here in Minnesota, as well as a couple cities in South Dakota. And what I often see is I see county providers, they'll often fill up those gold cards, and they'll fill it up to tunes of $200, $300, $400 in transit services. But yet, you know damn well the person doesn't have access to access to water, clean clothes, access to food, adequate shelter. At some point, where do you draw the line with these county providers and say, you bear some of that responsibility, and you can't just fill up their go-karts and say, oh, have a nice day on the street. Luckily it's not gonna rain for the next 4 days. You'll be in good shape. Because that's what's happening. And that's why your trains are filling up. That's why your buses are filling up. That's why we have issues on the platform.
I think Heidi, I'll make a quick comment and then Heidi, go ahead. It feels like we've gone past questions and just gotten into commiserating. Heidi, go ahead.
My question is that Darrell brings up a good point, and then there's someone like me who gets, funding through Metro Transit, through the county, and I don't want to be like the burden, like, oh no, because the system is now broken to the point where because of what Darrell said, which makes sense, because it is true, and then people like us who truly need it don't get the help they actually need. So how do we balance that out so it doesn't become, because I just want to bring it up just because you guys can take it back and talk about, how do we help the community at the same time we're not causing other entities to get slammed to the point where no one's getting help then.
It's like you read my mind, Heidi. I was just about to ask a version of that exact same question. So many of us are in the community. Many of us work for organizations that maybe not address this stuff directly, but is there anything, do you have any asks of us? Again, we're not here to deal with homelessness, mental health, chemical dependency, poverty, but...
Chair, wow,
But I'll try.
I want to give that some thought.
I'll give you a bus card.
Yeah.
We'll ride the bus together.
Yeah, I think we know we need to forge as many partnerships and look for as many creative solutions as we can. And I don't have an immediate concrete ask other than I'd like to continue that dialogue and certainly would welcome ideas offline here too. And I'll keep thinking about, do we have concrete asks we can bring back to either you as a committee or you as individuals with networks and perspectives that we could benefit from. So I appreciate the request. I'm sorry I don't have it.
It's okay. Ideas keep popping into my head. I realize we're over by about 15 minutes. I do apologize. And if y'all need to be somewhere else, please let me know right now and I'll just be quiet and move on the agenda.
I have a meeting I need to get to, but I can take a couple more minutes. I don't want to rush this either.
Okay,
This has been a really good conversation.
Like at 2 or like at 1:30?
I definitely have to be someplace at 2.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
Just 3 more minutes then.
Okay.
Just, and information and assistance provided to just, your day-to-day riders. Is there anything that Metro Transit or Metro Transit Police does to inform riders as to steps they can take to? And I know that I'm not a big fan of shifting the responsibility onto riders. But just tips and tricks,
Yeah, Chair, really timely question. One of the action plan items, this is a little adjacent to your question, but one of the action plan items is to take a fresh look at our existing code of conduct. And actually, our hope is to bring a code of conduct to the Metropolitan Council for them to approve as policy. Right now, it's a little less formal of a document that's developed by a combination of what's in statute and against the law, according to state law, combined with some operational considerations. So anyway, we're taking a look at that, but to me, the code of conduct really does establish these are the expectations for behavior in a public space. And our hope is once we do that refresh, hopefully get the council to adopt it as formal policy, that we would invest in kind of a promotional campaign to really kind of raise awareness and remind people about, if you're going to use public transit, it is public, and here's the standards we hope all our customers will uphold and kind of create I don't want to say peer pressure, but kind of the sense of like, hey, we're all here together and we all have these kind of shared responsibilities to make it a pleasant experience for all. So I don't know if that's really getting at what you're asking, but I think it's a really timely question because we're just starting that work.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there really is much to get at what I'm asking. You know, I've been on the train when, you know, people are smoking cigarettes in the back of it, and I'm not going to go up to them and tell them to stop smoking cigarettes.
Right.
So,
You don't want to, and we wouldn't encourage, obviously, people to, but
Oh, but I have heard people voice their opinions on the train
It's,
about
yeah,
it.
we all know what happens. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for sticking over a little bit with us. And thank you for giving the majority of time for feedback.
Yeah.
Realizing that this is an issue that so far a bunch of Band-Aids have been applied to. But yeah,
Well, thank you.
sometimes it's
and
all we got. Yes. Thank you.
Invite us back. We're always happy to do
Oh,
this and want to
please come
continue the
back.
conversation.
Yes.
We need to know
Leslie.
the outcome of the train stuff, you know, because you didn't have
Yeah,
all that.
definitely.
The news is reporting it, but then we only know bits and pieces. You know the ending.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
All right, so next on the agenda is me for the TAAC 30th anniversary planning. We are making some good headway in this. Y'all might have seen the email that the Metropolitan Council, I think Metro Transit and Met Council, whatever, we're just gonna consider them one entity right now, even though I know Metro Transit will throw rocks at me if they hear me say that. But we are working with both Metropolitan Council and Metro Transit staff on a driver recognition. That email was sent out. I don't know if they've had any responses yet, but it was, I think, well-timed, and hopefully we'll get some responses from the community, maybe even some of you all, in terms of operators and technicians that can be nominated for going above and beyond in
Talking Metro Mobility,
Metro Mobility and regular route service.
do we think the ones who are still wearing masks and give them high five? Because I saw one today and I was very proud
Yeah,
of
you
him.
can nominate anybody you want.
I wasn't thinking of that. I was just thinking, you know, like, it's kind of like a recognition of thank you for the people who are still keeping us safe.
Yep, it's an individual nomination, not kind of a blanket thank you to folks who are wearing masks, but we will, I think it is it'll be this year that we decide on four operators or technicians to give a recognition specifically from this committee, the TAAC committee, and we're trying to relate it specifically to disability and maybe support of riders with disabilities. So that has gone out, that email has gone out. Hopefully folks are submitting responses. I ask any of you if you have operators or technicians that you think
I knew the
deserve that recognition, please do. It's always nice to recognize when folks do good. I know that humans tend to more easily focus on the negative than the positive. So focusing on the positive, I think is a good step. Yes, go ahead.
That kind of agrees with what you were just saying, because I just called a couple of weeks ago on a city bus driver, and I had him that like 2 days later, and he really appreciated it. Put a smile on his face.
So you said you called in terms of like doing good?
Out of his norm work.
Nice.
Yeah. I was in an area where it's not safe, downtown Minneapolis, and he must have seen the issue, and he didn't take off like he should have been, and he just came down out of the bus and kind of stood around me until the guys left.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
he went out of his norm just to make sure I was safe.
Good. And you called
I called the Metro Transit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just another reason, whether it's good or bad, to call the Metro Transit line and report things, because they need to know that these things are happening to remedy them. They're more than happy to both lift up drivers that do good things, but also do a kind of an education on drivers that say, you know, don't deploy the lift, or say the lift is broken, or say there's no room on the bus when clearly there is, because I know, I know that happens. But if it's not reported, Metro Transit can't deal with it. So we can complain all day long, but if Metro Transit doesn't know what's happening, they can't keep the data, and they can't take the necessary steps to educate drivers as to what the policies are in terms of riders with disabilities. So yeah, thank you for that.
And they do like thank yous, because I gave them, when they put the door down, the thing down, and then I can get in more appropriate. Today, the guy who wore the mask, he drove right up. I thought he would just wait until winter. He's never going to be able to do it. But he went almost like there was no curve. I was just like on the cement, on the sidewalk, and I've never had it that good. Know that he knows how to hit the spots, and do it right.
Yeah. It's it's not a hard thing to do to give someone a compliment, and I think it really does make a difference.
Even if they don't take it, at least
Yeah.
I gave it, because there's always those people like, whatever. And then there's people who really appreciate it, and then we get a little dialogue like, well, have a good evening, or be safe, and it's like, you too. So it goes back and forth. I've done a bunch of that, and it really does help the community.
I'm glad you did that. In regards to the second half of the 30th anniversary, I think it's going to be a little more difficult to put the timeline together, given that I have a lot of, I think, archival information that needs to be sifted through. Anybody's,
Well, let's do it. When can we do it?
if anybody's willing to help out with that, please let me know.
Where is it?
I got Darrell. I'll shoot the work group an email. But if anybody else wants to help
That's
sift
different
through.
than some of the advertising I've been getting about the 30th anniversary from the Met Council and us, and I've been getting, like it's coming up, it's happening. I've been getting it in my email box.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I've seen.
So
I don't know if I've seen that.
The Met Council has sent out, their nice little put-together thing. They've been talking about it.
Chair, did we talk about the driver recognition?
Yes, we did. I let folks know that the email went out, and that please.
What's the time frame on that?
Time frame is
They'll be back.
when are we gonna close it down?
Yep.
I don't know if we have a solid time frame on when we're gonna close the opportunity for folks to submit folks. But if you want to submit people, submit it now. I could look back in the email and it might say it in there, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
It was just in the email box, so you might want to look into it.
Andy might be able to help me out here.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the plan is to probably honor folks, at least verbally, at the December TAAC meeting. So we'd want to have people in by early November-ish, so that, we can set it up and know who we're going to honor.
But we're thinking maybe an in-person thing, whether or not they can be here. Obviously, they have jobs to do. But there'll be some sort of recognition at the December TAAC meeting. Thank you, Andy.
Are we giving a plaque? Are we giving like a little certificate? What did they get for as we vote for them? 'Cause they
We
might
haven't
not know.
decided that yet. Does anybody have any
Yeah,
suggestions?
but we don't have a budget, so where are we gonna get our budget from, our donation from? And if we take a donation, then the group has to take it as a whole, or they can take it on specifically for this event, I think.
Yeah, these are all good suggestions. Go ahead, Andy.
Chair, members of the committee, we talked about like a certificate, both because of the lack of budget, also because it is somewhat complicated since these are not Met Council employees, what the council can sponsor and be involved with if we are giving something of monetary value, even food or whatever, as part of a formal recognition or award related to job duties. So.
And is that because we're set up as a government entity, basically?
Yeah, it's partially because we are a government entity. It's partially because we need to be really clear about our employment status legally for a variety of reasons, from, collective bargaining relationships that folks have with their own employers, we have.
If you give them anything of value, you have to declare it.
Yep, so to answer the question, I think in the planning meetings, we're talking about like a certificate.
And we'll have like the logo of Metro Mobility on it, something that kind of brings the recognition of, it's not just a certificate and it looks very generic and blah.
Yeah, I think we can spruce it up and do something that is not necessarily Metro Mobility, because remember, Metro Transit's involved too, but
Oh, yeah.
something that indicates that it's from the Met Council and the TAAC, from the TAAC as an advisory body of the Met Council.
Cool.
And then also, I don't know if we're in member comment yet or not, but
We can be shortly, but we're talking about the 30th anniversary planning. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
I did see some things about it. And
Okay, good.
so you might want to look at the Met Council stuff, and they're talking about 30 years,
We've been here for a long time. And again, if folks have memories of things in the past, please send them my way.
Okay.
I think that whatever we can get in terms of the history of TAAC would be helpful.
You need all of your stuff.
Whatever you can get it.
Okay.
As soon as possible. All right, let's move on to reports. I did ask Ken if he had a Blue Line report. He told me that they had not restarted the meetings yet for the Blue Line, but things still are the same where they have, decided to move forward with the Blue Line. It was on hold for quite a long time, but they have not actually met yet. I don't see Chris Bates online, and he's not in the room. Darrell, did you have gold or purple line updates?
I don't have a goal line update except for I believe there's working on utility improvements and they're starting some small online, or not online, but some small construction later this fall. And then the purple line, we'll have our second meeting on the 13th of September. So after we have that meeting, I'll forward those notes accordingly so they get in the packet.
Thank you, Darrell. It's not a requirement, but just an option. If anybody or Doug wants to speak to any updates on the priority seating tech work group. I'm not sure anything has happened on that, but it's just an option.
Yeah, I haven't seen much about that lately. I did see some videos surface to the top, and then it stopped for a minute there, and I think I did see a couple of them come back up, and I do know that they are being somebody is seeing them on the street somewhere, because I do know a couple of the drivers, when I talked to them about driver recognition, they were like, oh yeah, I seen a couple of videos that you were in. So, they are being seen somewhere, and hopefully we can recognize some of those drivers, at least they go out in the suburbs and have been on the system I'm talking to drivers that have been on the system for 20 years and probably have only been recognized maybe twice in those 20 years. And we should do a better job in recognizing those drivers and retaining those drivers. I know we want to make room for new ones and we want to make room for new blood that come on the system, but the old drivers, they know the system, they know their customers, they know the demands of the bus that they choose to take a hold of. And so I don't want us to lose that just because we might not want to pay them, or they might be at the close part of their salary cap. So we want to make room for new drivers. I get that, but let's figure out how to maintain that relationship with our longtime older drivers as well. So
we are still continuing to put the posters and it's on sides of buses, so that's going to be continuing. I'm not sure how long or if it's just going to be intermittent in the future, but
Are those posters going out into the suburbs too?
Well, wherever the bus goes, you're going to see it. So it's like right on the side of the bus, you can't miss it.
Thank
Because
you, Doug.
sometimes the inner group gets it more than the outer group.
I mean, probably wherever there's more buses is where you will see more of the posters and things on the side of the buses. I did mention last month that I saw on multiple buses actually the campaign results in terms of, you know, remember folks, these seats are reserved. Thank you very much, Doug. Did we skip you in introductions? I think we did.
Yeah, I'm Doug Cook, Metro Transit Liaison.
Started with Carrie, it went all around, and it just stopped right. Sorry, nothing personal, Doug.
Did Doug not want to sit up here by me or what?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Heidi.
What it has to do with, because we got some people that are working on the trains, you know, and different ones. Why is it right now we're having a big problem with the money? In the past, it's never really been talked about, like, the green line went kind of smooth, and mostly what we were complaining about is making sure we still can use the bus stops, you know, and making them ADA and certain things, you know? And I was just trying to wrap my head around right now, why we're having a bigger issue than we never had in the past. You know what I mean, with some of the other ones? Because they sound like they went more smooth.
So I'll move us into member comment right now, just so we can keep things formal. So the question regarding, you're talking about funding for, you said the money. Can you ask it again, please? I'm sorry.
It's the funding for the train that they're trying to connect from one city to the other, and they're right now got in big trouble, and it went to the legislator and the Met Council. But I have never heard anything like this in, you know, since coming out, because all the other trains, you know, lines have done okay or met their goals or did what they were supposed to.
I think.
What is so big of a, you know? And I thought maybe somebody, or maybe Darrell or anybody heard anything of why.
So I think you're in regards to the Green Line extension or Southwest LRT.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just been a politically hot button topic since it was proposed, and they ran into some, I think, retaining wall issues and other things that increase costs.
I remember in the past, we were fighting to make sure we still can use the bus stops correctly and, you know, as they build the trains, you know, and can we, you know, cross the street safely? And it wasn't about like thousands of dollars problem, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for that member comment. Do any other members have comments? Go ahead, Darrell. I think you might.
Yeah, I would just say, Heidi, it just boils down to 2 words: election year. Okay? I mean, Southwest, I mean, that's always been a hot button topic. And because we're gonna pay double what we originally wanted to pay for it, it's always gonna be, some people are gonna like it and some people are gonna hate it.
Okay.
And that's just the way it is.
It's been like a hot topic on the news, and I've been like, and I was thinking about how we fought in the past for just basic things, like we would tell them, make sure it's ADA, you know, so we can get to that bus stop and you guys still do the trains, you know, and we still can get to jobs and stuff. Those are the things we were fighting for. We weren't fighting, oh God, it's like thousands of dollars, like, you know.
Yeah, it's, you know, unfortunately, public transportation is.
I know the
Is
blue line's
political.
a hot topic right now too, because there's a couple of mayors that are working with Met Council to try and change the direction of the blue line.
Oh.
Because of crime, their issues of crime, the noise, destruction of houses and businesses.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been a hot topic north.
And the train line, I
Yep.
remember that, you know, the actual trains that, not like we're talking about, but real trains that go across the United States and that to bring things into Minnesota. Do they want to give up their land, you know, for us? You know, so we can be kind of friends with each other.
Freight rail has a lot of power in this country. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Any other member comment? No?
Oh, I do have one thing, and
Go
I
ahead.
told Andy earlier, and I wish Ken was online, because I felt sorry for people like Ken, it's not like a bad thing the way I'm saying this. I actually followed the rules of crossing the street correctly. And the Metro Mobility guy on a Sunday decided to meet up with me, and then we couldn't communicate very well. And I said if that was Ken, his dog probably would have stopped to save him, but Ken wouldn't have understood what was going on. And I don't want anybody to end up in the hospital or dead. But I just wanted to mention that, that recently happened because, and then I finally just got confused because I didn't know if he was going or if I was going. So I put my hand out and said, stop, and so I can just finish what I was doing because neither of us were making sense. And then when he drove down Robert Street heading towards Inver Grove or South St. Paul, something told me to turn my head and he waved like, I'm sorry for what I did. So, and Andy says he'll bring it back and just think about training because someone like Ken, if this dog was going to save him, Ken wouldn't have understood. Because I even got confused and I can see the whole action of what was going on. So and I followed everything like Ken talks about, and how he processes is similar to how I process. So I did everything correctly. It's just that we met up at the wrong time. And so I just wanted to mention that was my experience lately. So just keep your eyes and ears and, watch out, And it was a Metro Mobility, not a car, but one of those vans type, buses. And so I just wanted to tell you guys that, just so you guys know to keep your alert.
Thank you, Heidi.
So David, under member comment, I would add
Go ahead.
that we look and figure out when we want to review our yearly plan that TAAC typically does when we look at it we should be looking at it every year, but I know we try to look at it every couple years or.
Our yearly what?
Our long-term plan.
Oh, plan, okay.
We used to try to look at it every year, but really, I don't think we do. We typically get it out there, and then we look at it maybe every 2-3 years. And I think we should just look at it and try to switch some things around so that come next year, when we want to hit the ground running for some real advocacy work, then we know what our hop-on months are and what the things are that we typically talk about.
And do we count the pandemic as part of that? Because we had a pandemic that kind of changed how we do things. So does that change, or do we follow what Andy was saying? There's certain things we just have to follow and certain things we can switch. You know what I mean? That the pandemic made us go online and, so it changed how we do certain things,
Something tells me that will be involved in pretty much everything forever. So yes, the answer in short, yes. Any other member comment?
Are we still talking about priority seating?
We
can.
If you want to have a member comment about the priority seating campaign, you mean the work group? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or just priority seating in general?
Well, I guess in general, but I would like to be on that committee anyway.
I think you already are on that committee, Carrie.
It just hasn't met for a long time.
Okay, all right. Well, during the state fair and even prior, I've been noticing that drivers will ask someone to vacate the handicap seating, and it's always the elderly people, and they're the ones that don't need to be moving. It's the younger people that aren't moving.
Okay.
That's interesting, Carrie. Cause I have seen that as well in myself, but I mean, in a caveat to that, or on another note to that, a lot of times it's the elderly folks that will understand that we need the seating, and they're willing to get up and move back one or two. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it it does look kind of bad when they're the ones that do it. But as well, I mean, if it's an elderly person that generally needs the seat, I mean, I'll say, hey, can you, to the driver, I'll say, can you move these people instead? And then usually something happens. But in my case, I often have to take both sides. So, I mean, it's a little more challenging.
And I've been told to sit certain places only because the wheelchairs have to fit in a certain way, because I'm getting some of the older vehicles. And, and they just want to make sure that that little area, it has enough, room for everybody to do what they need to do. So that's what I've been told lately.
Well, I mean, what that tells me, team, and what that tells me, members, is that the campaign for priority city is getting out there. It's maybe not getting out there at the level that we'd like it to get out there, or maybe it's not out there at the times when we expect it to be out there, but it is getting out there and people are talking about it. So I think ideally that's a good thing. I mean, so I think what we'll see, what will really tell me if it's out there is how they'll deal with it more in the wintertime.
Oh, yeah.
Inclement weather and those kind of things. But I mean, let's hope that they typically look at things differently during inclement weather. So I think we'll be good, but it'd be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. That was just a comment that I wasn't really, I'll ask a question offline, but that was just really a comment, because I mean, I don't know what we can do about that.
Sure.
And I'd like to know what we can do about that.
Thank you for bringing it up. It sounds like the bus driver says, hey, we have someone who needs this seating, will people move? And then what you're seeing is, older folks getting up and moving as opposed to younger folks,
Yeah.
which doesn't surprise me because older folks have more world experience and maybe a little more understanding of people. But that's just a general opinion comment, not anything that's based in anything except my own opinion. All right, any other member comment?
No.
Any members of the public like to comment? There's lots of members of the public here.
Well, there's only two.
Arguably not members of the public.
Or if somebody's online.
I think they'd have to
Well-
submit beforehand to join online. But we are 18 minutes early.
We've never been 18 minutes.
I know, we
Usually
usually
over.
struggle to end on time. Only 1.5 agenda items, that's what
Does
happened.
he need, no Metro Mobility reports or
We,
anything? Andy?
no, we had a report
No, I was
last month.
just wondering, because this is a good time for Andy. Does Andy have any
Well,
updates?
it's not an agenda item, so we cannot, he was not prepared to talk, so I'm not gonna force Andy to talk.
I've got a request. If anybody knows anybody who wants to be a driver, have them call us or our provider.
Okay.
No shortage of drivers.
They told me I wasn't eligible.
Try again.
I'm definitely not
Your answer has
eligible.
changed.
Try again.
You know you're not going to get there like
Exactly. But yeah, it's like. Welcome aboard, Sarah.
We are adjourned.
Yeah, okay.